everybody, it's Donna. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm working on a card for the 2020 Alphabet Inspiration Card Challenge, and today's prompt that I'm using is the letter B. I have picked from that list blueberry bushel as one of the colors I'm going to be using, as well as boat, bird, and birthday. There's a quick little glimpse of the card that we'll be making. I'm going to be using the By the Dock stamp set and the coordinating dies to create this card. You will need a piece of blueberry bushel, 8.5 by 5.5 for the card base. It is a retiring color, so if you would like that color, please run over and purchase it quickly. You also need Sahara sand, 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, 2 pieces of whisper white, 5 1/4 by 4, plus a scrap of whisper white. You will also need a scrap of mossy meadow. I'm using the coordinating ink pads in Sahara sand and blueberry bushel as well. I'm also using some blends. I picked out, I believe, basically the coordinating colors like mossy meadow. I did use soft suede, smoky slate, and I believe that's crumb cake that's in there as well. And as well as the bronze, but I don't believe I ended up using the bronze. You're going to need some post-it tape just to mask off the horizon, and some ordinary everyday supplies like Versamark, embossing buddy, the heat tool, some black embossing powder, some memento because we are doing some blend coloring, as well as something to clean your stamps. I'm using the stamp chamois for cleaning my stamps off. You'll need a pencil, as well as some stamp blocks or a stamp positioning tool such as the Stamparatus. For glue, I'm using the Tombow glue, liquid glue. I'm also using, I believe I used some stamping dimensionals as well as some glue dots, and I did end up using some of this tacky spray adhesive for the dock. I'm also, for the sentiment, I couldn't find anything for the inside, so I'm using this perennial birthday stamp set. I'm just going to pick one for the inside. And we're going to do all the stamping at once. Using the scrap piece of whisper white, I'm going to stamp out the dock once using memento, and then I'm going to flip the card around, or the piece around, and stamp out the dock. These are later going to be die cut out and then colored. Now I'm going to work on the inside of the card. I did realize afterwards that I actually stamped this in the wrong orientation. It should have been landscape rather than portrait, which is how I'm going to stamp it right now. But it goes at the end, recreate the inside, and I'll use this piece for another card. Just stamping it in the center, and then I decided that it was too plain, so it needed something else to go there as well. So I stamped 2 of the paddles using Sahara sand and just kind of crossed them over so they crisscross on there, just to add a little element to the inside of the card. Now we're going to work on the front of the card. This is where I need the pencil. Now I've made many of these cards by now, so I know pretty much where I want the shoreline to go, but I'm just going to kind of measure it. It's going to start off to the left there, about 1.25 inches up, and then I just kind of dip down and then dip back up again. It's not going to match up precisely because I am going to use a stamp to actually stamp that out, but I did want to have some idea what I was doing or what I was planning on doing. I also need a line for the horizon, so I just put a little tick just so I make sure that I don't put the birds that I'm going to stamp on there below the horizon level. So that's just basically maybe 1 inch down. Now I'm going to stamp in with memento the grassy part, or the shoreline. I don't know how you figure it is. I guess it's artistic impression, but to me it's like the shoreline with little seaweedy type things coming in there. I'm going to stamp it once, kind of not quite in the center, more towards the left. This was what I was considering my main part, where my boat was going to be, so I was more concerned with it than the other two. And then the other one off to the right is just going kind of going up, like going up a hill, and the one to the left is just kind of going downwards. Again, it's not that important. It's however you feel it should be. I just didn't want to do them 3 in a row, so I had like loops. I want it to be different, rather than just looking like it was the Fred Flintstone kind of repeating the same thing. I did heat set this because I want to erase the pencil marks that I used, and I didn't want it to smear, so I did heat set that. I actually heat set most of the stamping just to prevent anything from smearing. Once that's done, we're going to continue stamping some other items onto there. We're going to start with the happy birthday down in the bottom right corner. And this part you don't need to use a heat emboss it, but I just found that it kind of stood out a little bit better by doing that. So I'm going to stamp the happy birthday in Versamark and using my embossing buddy first so I don't get any extra stray pieces. Sprinkle some embossing powder on that and then heat set that. Okay, once that's heat set, we're going to add some other elements. I'm going to start with the birds. I'm going to do 3 birds across the top above so it's in the sky area. So not going below where my pencil mark was. And then I'm going to take the little frog that's there and I'm going to stamp it just in the bottom left corner. After I finish this, I'm actually going to take some of the blueberry bushel and put waves in the lake. Now I didn't know what side up was with these waves, so I decided just turn them both directions so I had a little bit of variation in the way the waves looked to begin with, and flipping it upside down so that I had waves in different orientations. Okay, so now we're going to do some coloring using the stamping blends, which are an alcohol-based marker. I'm not doing a lot of shading on this part. I will do a little bit of shading on the boat and the dock, but not on the little images here. For the frog, I'm just using some mossy meadow in the light, and then I'm going to go back and do the grassy part in the mossy meadow dark. Then I'm going to switch to smoky slate dark, and I'm going to just color in the bits of the stones or the pebbles that I can do. And then switch to smoky slate light and do the 3 birds up at the top. Once the birds are all done, I'm going to move to the other piece with the boat and the dock on it. For the boat, I'm using soft suede, both light and dark, and I'm going to color it first with the light, and then I'm going to go back in with the dark and add some shadows and just definition to the seats and that. I'm not an artist, so I just color in the way I can. And it works out fine. I mean, it's not something I'd want to frame and put on my wall, but it works out fine. And then moving on to the dock. For the dock, we ended up using just crumb cake. For the dock itself, I used the gray for the bird as well as the soft suede for the rope. But for the dock itself, I used crumb cake, both light and dark. So I just did the whole dock in light, and then went back in and added some shadows with some shading with the dark crumb cake. I didn't end up using the bronze. I was going to use the bronze for some darker tones, but I felt that might be too much of a difference between the two colors. Now we're going to mask off with some post-it tape the horizon line. So I'm going to do the lake first. I'm not going to be changing colors between the two, but by doing it this way, I kind of keep the sky area just a little bit lighter than the lake area. And you can definitely see the horizon line then. We're going to start with some Sahara sand and a sponge dauber, and we're going to sponge in color along the shoreline there. I want the color to extend past the stamping because I want it to look like there's a beach down there. Just sponging that all the way over. It is going to be blotchy. That's really how I want it. I didn't want too much ink to be on there, and I do want it to look like there's definition or changes in the sand and the color. Once that's done, I'm going to switch to blueberry bushel. Now I didn't have a sponge dauber for blueberry bushel, so I switched to just a piece of sponge, but it works just the same. And then sponging in some color there. Now as you can tell, I'm just doing the one area, and I am blending in a bit where the shoreline meets. Once we take that off, we're going to do the sky. You can definitely see the horizon line there. And then just sponge some more color up there. Erase the 2 pencil marks, and the background is basically done. Okay, now I'm just going to put in a picture of what I do when I have a stamp set that has different pieces, like different stamps, different dies, and I'm trying to match them up. I usually stamp all the elements out, and as well die cut all the elements so I can match them up, because some stamps don't have dies for them, and then some dies don't actually have stamps for them. I also create templates for the items I might have a problem getting the white border all the way around. I do the templates completely in black so that I can see the white border when it comes time to die cut them out. So for this one, I'm using the die to cut the boat. Now it ends up afterwards, I don't really want the white trim around it. So you could do a couple of things. You can just cut that out. You could cut the boat out completely without the die because you really don't need the die. It's that easy. Or you can use an electronic cutting tool like the Scan and Cut. So I'm going to cut out the boat and the dock. As well, I'm going to use the mossy meadow. I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of the grassy part that there is no stamp for. It's just a die. I'm going to cut 2 of those, as well as one of there's a hopping frog in the die that's available where there's no stamp. So I cut one of him out as well. I also have a little piece for that just cuts out so you can slip things behind it. And that's that piece right there. I just want to show you that I can't cut it twice or else it's going to cut the whole piece right off. So I place the die, but then the top plate is just going to go to where I want it cut, and it will not cut beyond that point. So that's how I did that. I did that twice on that front piece so I can slide in some of the grassy part. So there's the dock cut out, and as you can see, it has a white border. If you don't want to cut around it, you could just sponge on some blue, and it kind of blends in. I decided not to do that. I decided to trim off all the little white bits that I didn't want. The boat was fairly simple to do. The dock's has a little bit more little intricate pieces, but it still worked. So there's all the pieces that I need. I'm going to take the coordinating stamping blends, the ones that I used to color the pieces, and I'm just going to rub it along the edge very gently. That gets rid of any of the whiteness or any jagged edges. You won't see it anymore. It masks a lot of cutting issues. And then you don't see the white core, I guess. So I did that to the boat as well as the dock. Once that's done, we're going to place the boat where we want it on the card. I'm using dimensionals for the boat. I just wanted to it popped up just a little bit higher than the rest. So placing it where I wanted it, which I wanted it right kind of underneath that one little leaf there, because I wanted to show dimension. So I really wanted the leafy part to be in the front. Now the dock, I used spray adhesive. I didn't show it to you because it smells, so I did it outside. But I sprayed spray adhesive on the back of it so that all the little parts of the dock would be completely adhered to the piece. Then I'm just going to flip it over and cut off the part that extended. Once that's done, I'm going to take the little grassy pieces. I'm going to cut them into little pieces and use them in behind where I die cut, as well as the hopping frog. I'm going to place the hopping frog first. I'm just using glue dots for him as well as for the grassy pieces. So the hopping frog is going to be behind one of those grassy pieces that were cut. And I just put a glue dot on him to hold him down. The other 2 pieces, or 2 or 3 pieces, whatever I used a glue dot as well, but for these ones I put the glue dot on the front because it was actually going to stick to the back of the card, so you're not going to see it. It was easier to do it that way. Just needed that piece a little bit smaller, and then a glue dot to slide it in there. And same with that one. Okay, so that's what the front looks like. Now all we have to do is basically put it together. So you're just using some Tombow liquid adhesive to attach it to the mat that I made with the Sahara sand. Attaching that to the card front. And then I'm going to attach the inside, which I redid in the right orientation. I also realized for this card I only used 2 pieces of the grassy part, so we really only need to cut one out. In my other cards I actually used 3 pieces. I used 2 from one and then 1 piece from the other one. But in this case I only used the one. Okay, so here is the finished card. I'm also going to put up on the screen a copy of the prompts that I used. You don't have to use the same words that I used, but there are the B words that I could come up with. Please use the hashtags as shown on the screen so that I can look at your creations. Please hit that subscribe button, and if you'd like to see more videos from the 2020 Alphabet Inspiration Card Challenge, please tap that bell button. Thanks for watching and stay safe.